The QR code, short for quick response, is an evolution on barcodes that are often used to point users to a specific website or app. Try this one here. Did you scan it? I'll give you a moment. Had to get a quick little self-promotion of our Newsy YouTube page in, but anyway, I digress. They've also been used increasingly often as tickets for things like concerts, sporting events, flights, and public transportation. In the early phases of the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses often used them to go paperless and minimize physical contact. If you ate out, you might remember the hassle of getting your phone camera to recognize the QR code or loading up the menu on one bar of reception. And some of y'all are still struggling. I've seen you. But QR codes raise some interesting questions as they become a more regular part of global life. Like, how safe is your data when using a QR code? Alan Liska works at the intelligence and cybersecurity firm Recorded Future, which is usually focused on corporate cybersecurity threats. But he says the individual things to look out for when using QR codes are pretty similar.
You don't know, as the consumer, you don't know what that URL is. You get a preview in the window of a URL, but it's often a shortened URL, so that doesn't even necessarily mean anything. So that is where there's potential for problems.
So QR codes don't necessarily all serve the same purpose. You might want to make sure when you click it that you're at a safe link before entering any sensitive info. Not every QR code can be read though, since they aren't all necessarily speaking the same language. Your phone, for example, might not be able to scan the kind of QR code you might use as a boarding pass or concert ticket.
We've had this for a while with like UPC codes, right? You know, when you go to the grocery store, they have the right software that reads those UPC codes, and it's customized for each store. You scan that in, and that the item that it is and the price comes up and goes in your bag, and they can track how much was purchased, who purchased it, how much they paid for it, etc.
Side note, October marks the 70th anniversary of the first barcode type product, so happy birthday, barcode. Here's to evolving with the technology. Anyway, in most cases, those QR codes still connect to some form of data to make them work. So even when you're boarding public transit, you might be giving the transit agency that data. Sarah Kaufman from NYU's Rudin Center for Transportation has seen it at work in and around New York City.
And it allows more information for the transit company to provide better service, have a better sense of who's traveling where, and then be able to optimize services based on that data.
Cities around the world have adopted QR code tickets for their metro systems, including Shanghai and Delhi. But you can see them stateside too. The LA Metro system uses QR code ticketing, as do large commuter rail systems in the New York area, like New Jersey Transit, Metro North, and the Long Island Railroad. And using the codes has some advantages, both for train operators and for riders.
After you purchase the ticket through the app, a QR code shows up on your screen. Because QR codes can sometimes be a little easy to fake, these apps now have the ability to have a kind of dancing QR code that can only be read by the train engineer's readers. This is so much better than the paper tickets that would get lost or damaged, or that would require a 20-minute wait in a lineup for a ticket machine. So it's a far more efficient system.
As Joshua Shank, who used to work as Chief Innovation Officer of the LA Metro system, told us, public transit systems want to accept as many forms of payment and ticketing as possible.
The more you make your product accessible to everyone, the better chance you have of attracting customers. And it's like a classic thing where people say, well, why should we still accept cash? That's, who's going to do that? Well, some people might, and it might not be who you think. It might be the average occasional rider who thinks, I don't know how to use this thing, but I might have some cash, so I'll just use that. And when you create more ways and make it as convenient as possible for your customers to pay, it actually creates additional benefits beyond just reaching hard-to-reach population.
But accessibility still hangs as a question here. What do you do if you don't have a bank or credit card, or if you don't have a smartphone? That can lead to a surprisingly large portion of the ridership relying on cash. A study sponsored by the National Institute for Transportation and Communities found that around 30% of riders, nearly a third of those they surveyed in cities in Colorado and Oregon, still relied heavily on paying cash when they boarded buses. Because of Joshua's point about systems aiming to be accessible, you can still expect cash to be accepted somewhere, even as more metro systems move to QR codes and wireless-enabled cards. The main issue is that it might take a little more work, like waiting in line to see a station manager or going to a local pharmacy to buy the card. Once those users or anyone else gets on board though, there are gains. Sarah told us about one example with express buses in New York City.
Since New York implemented our version of select bus service, which means that people pay at a machine before boarding the bus, now people can board the bus at any door rather than just the driver's side, rather than just the driver adjacent door. And that has sped up boarding by about 30%, meaning that the bus spends about 30% less time waiting for people to get on and off at every stop. And that is a major advantage for people riding the bus, who tend to sit at these bus stops forever waiting for people to get on and off, especially during rush hour.